I would love to see education funded at higher levels, but it's not a money problem. We've been throwing money at this problem for decades. $190 billion was put in after COVID to combat learning loss. And we've seen that didn't work. Where did $190 billion go? I can tell you it did not go into helping students achieve academically. Unfortunately, what it is about is free market competition, free market principles, innovation, entrepreneurship coming into the education space and being welcomed there, where parents as consumers can make choices that are best for their children.
All right, guys, I had an opportunity to swing by the White House yesterday, catch up with Karoline. There we are. I posted that on social media if you want to give it a like or a retweet as well. And it was a big day in the White House briefing room. Let me get to that in just a second. But first, the House passed the budget. What a wild event that was. They had started to send members home. Then they thought they could turn them. Trump made some phone calls. And eventually it passed by a wide margin of 2 votes. It now moves over to the Senate. They'll do that. And I think we're on our way to one big, beautiful bill. That's great. By the way, some breaking news out of the FBI. Kash Patel, the new director, Dan Bongino, the deputy director, announcing that they are investigating James Comey for running an off-the-book investigation and operation to infiltrate Trump's 2016 campaign. I'm excited to see where this goes. Pete Hegseth down at Gitmo yesterday looking at how to reuse the space down there that had been used for detainees to house illegals on their way out of the country. But aside from the big cabinet meeting today and the press melting down because Elon's attending. And by the way, I posted this photo as well on social media. Cabinet meetings are attended by staff every time. That's actually normal. So the idea that Elon is there is the press creating a faux hysterical tizzy. It's nothing big. The media actually gets to go into cabinet meetings too. So they need to pump the brakes. I get it. They're scared of Elon, but they're creating a false sense of hype. I went to cabinet meetings. I actually had a assigned chair in the back. Like, this is no big deal. But a big announcement from Karoline Leavitt out of the White House about expanding who gets to cover the White House. Let me play you just a second of that.
Moving forward, the White House press pool will be determined by the White House press team. Legacy outlets who have participated in the press pool for decades will still be allowed to join. Fear not. But we will also be offering the privilege to well-deserving outlets who have never been allowed to share in this awesome responsibility. Just like we added a new media seat in this briefing room, legacy media outlets who have been here for years will still participate in the pool, but new voices are going to be welcomed in as well.
All right. That's the big thing about this. And this is where, again, the press isn't telling you the story. Here's what the takeaway is, folks. She's actually expanding access. More voices in the White House, not less. So normally the way it works is a representative of each of the different groups. So photographers, cameramen, print, wires, right? Radio. They all get to rotate sending somebody into small places like the Oval Office or Air Force One. What the White House is doing is saying, and by the way, the only way you can get one of those slots is to be a member of the White House Correspondents Association, which gets to determine its own membership by a bunch of stringent rules. So if you're an independent journalist or a smaller media organization, you're shut out. They love this because it protects the legacy media's decisions about what you read, see, and hear. And what the White House did yesterday, because don't let the media fool us, is they expanded coverage. They said, yeah, you legacy folks can do this, but we're going to add other outlets. For example, today, The Blaze got to join the pool. Why is this threatening to them? If you really care about the First Amendment and press access, you should be applauding this. But they don't, because they realize that the jig is up. We're going to actually see their biased coverage. And kudos to Karoline for exposing that, by the way. She gets huge props for that. I mentioned this before. Today, we've got a great show. Erika Donalds is here. She's going to be the future First Lady of Florida. She's currently heading up the America First Policy Institute's Education Center, and she's going to talk to us about what they're doing and why it's so important, what Linda McMahon is about to do at the Department of Education. But we're going to lead with Salena Zito, who is an unbelievable reporter that's got a brand new book out about the insight she has on being feet from President Trump at Butler. Then later this week, we've got an amazing panel to talk about so much stuff going on in the media. And Friday, 2 Trump insiders, Derek Lyons and Jordan Karam, who were his personal aide and the staff secretary at the end of the last term, are going to give us some insight into working with Donald Trump that you will see nowhere else. All right, before we kick off 2 amazing interviews, I got to tell you, if you have feet issues, hip issues, back issues, Trust me when I tell you the Gravity Defier shoes are an absolute game changer. I have 3 pairs right now. I've told you guys this before. I have a pair that I play pickleball, whatever. I've got a workout pair, and then a pair that I go running. And let's face it, it's a job. But as a guy that has both knee issues and hip issues, holy smokes. These shoes have a thing called Verso technology. It's what's in a trampoline. So the sense of cushioning and support is like nothing that I've ever seen. And if you have a wide foot like I do, they got sizes for all of that. These are FTC approved to relieve pain. So whether you're someone who just stands on your feet all day, you do a lot of walking or running, tell me, trust me, this is amazing. It works as hard as you do. So here's the best part. Listeners of the show can get an exclusive 50% off all orders of $120 or more. Just text Sean, SEIN, to 91888. Sean to 91888. That's half off shoes that will transform your life. So if you're a walker, a runner, or a stander, trust me when I say go to Gravity Defier shoes and you will never forget how awesome that is. So text Sean to 91888 or visit gdefy.com. So it's Gravity Defier, gdefy.com. Listen, speaking of Pete Hegseth, you guys saw this clip the other day. I played it for you. He literally got audited by the IRS. Okay. So if you think that you're immune, not so. Everybody is in the targets of the IRS because these guys feel empowered. They feel that they've got the weight of the federal government behind them. And in some ways they kind of do. So if you're somebody who has unfiled taxes, unfiled returns, trust me, at some point they will catch up with you. The IRS is no one to joke with. Don't try to go it alone. Get professional help. I think the best in the business are the folks at Tax Network USA, because the folks at Tax Network USA have been doing this for so long. They know who they can talk to. They know who they can cut deals with. They know who also to avoid. They've got proven strategies that have saved over $1 billion for their clients. So if you're getting one of these pay up notices, or frankly, give them a call and have a conversation for absolutely free, for nada. Talk to one of their strategists about what you can do to get ahead of the curve so you can stop the threatening letters from coming in the first place, stop them from looking over your shoulder. Just give them a call, 1-800-905-8000, or go to TN USA. That's Tax Network, right? TNUSA.com/Sean Spicer. Full name, SEAN, SPICR, no spaces, TNUSA.com/Sean Spicer. Without further ado, the amazing Salena Zito. Salena, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you. Congratulations on the new book. The first book was so awesome, and I think an introductory to Trump voters for so many of the woke world after the first election. This new book, Butler, The Untold Story of the Near Assassination of Donald Trump. I love this because, well, I'll let you tell it, because it's not just that you're some reporter covering it. You were in a very, very unique situation on that fateful day.
I really was. And of course, as you know this, you've dealt with the press. And when you're a reporter, never expect whatever was supposed to happen. So the morning that I go to Butler, I'm supposed to interview President Trump before the rally. And I cannot express to your listeners enough how hot it was that day. I think it was 103. So I'm standing in Butler in an open field at the farm complex. There's so many people there and tons of reporters. And I get a text and being told, Salena, your interview has been changed. And so in my head, I'm thinking, oh, well, here it comes. It's not going to happen. That's just the way you have to roll. And they're like, no, it's going to happen. We're running late. We'll do it after the rally. I'm like, okay. And so I'm thinking there's still a chance this is not going to happen. Right. But I'm there with my daughter, who's a photojournalist. But I also dragged my son-in-law along because I didn't want to carry all the equipment. I wanted to make him to carry the equipment so I wouldn't be all hot and sweaty, but that happened anyways. Trump gets there, and his name was Michelle. He's the spokesperson. He was a campaign spokesperson. He goes, "It's go time." I'm like, what do you mean it's go time? I thought I was doing it after. He goes, "Let's go." I'm like, okay, I'm ready. So I grab my daughter, I grab my son-in-law. We go flying into the back of the event, and it's the click line, right? And if for those who
which
don't
is where VIPs take photos. That's where like the local, when you're before an event, the president does photos with VIPs, elected officials, et cetera, big donors.
Right. And at the time, it was all state troopers, right? And oftentimes the Trump campaign just brings in regular people out in the crowd, and they get to meet the president. And it's actually, I wish more people got to see this because it's actually very endearing. There's a lot of hugs. He spends a lot of time talking with them. Anyways, I get back there and I look around and I said to Michelle, where am I doing this interview? And he looked at me and he goes, I actually have no idea. So he goes around and he asks the president, and he comes back and he goes, you're not doing the interview. And I'm like, is it being canceled? And he goes, no. You're still going to Bedminster. I forgot that part. They told me that I'm going to do the interview on the plane flying from Butler to Bedminster. Wait,
hold on. You go to this rally, you think you're interviewing President Trump or before or after the rally, and the next thing you know, they're like, hey, by the way, I hope you packed an overnight bag. You're coming on the plane with us to Bedminster, New Jersey?
Yeah. I forgot that part. Yeah.
That's just a little small. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you adapt though, right? I didn't have an overnight bag.
Welcome to Trump world.
But, the campaign said, instead of doing like a quick interview, why don't you fly with the president to Bedminster from Butler? And I'm like, okay. Didn't have that on my bingo card. So that's what happened. So, I'm in the back now thinking it's been changed again. And he said, no, you're still going to Bedminster. He just wants to say hi to you. I'm like, oh. Okay. So I go in, he's like, Salena, you have the best hair in journalism. He asked about my grandchildren. He said, I'm looking forward to the interview. And then I left. And at that point, they couldn't get me and Shannon and Michael back to the riser. Right.
Okay.
So
they said where the press covers it.
Where the press covers him, because at that point that access had been closed off. He's ready to go out to the on stage. And so they said, well, just go in the buffer. That's how I ended up being in the buffer when he was shot at.
Which is the place, which, by the way, just again, to give people, so there's a fence, like usually a barrier where the crowd stops, and then an area between him and the stage where he's speaking from, so that, for security purposes, so you can't get too close. It's like the mosh pit at a concert.
Yeah, it's like this well. And it was 5 photojournalists there, and myself and my daughter, and who's a photojournalist, and my son-in-law, who's not, but he had a camera, so he was taking photos too. And the president comes out. We're standing right there. He waves to the crowd. He goes over and he to the podium, waves to the crowd, and he starts. And I go off to the side along with my daughter and son-in-law, still taking photos. I have my recorder on, and the president does 2 things that I've never seen him do before. And I have covered, as you know, Sean, about a zillion rallies. He turns, first of all, a chart comes down. And I was like, what is he, Ross Perot? Like, he never has a chart.
How many people in the audience just got that one? Yeah.
Yeah. And then the president his relationship with the people that attend a rally is very transactional.
Yeah.
He feeds off of them. They feed off of him. It's a very, very emotional bond. Because of that, he never looks away from them. Now, he'll face this way or this way, but it's the whole body. He never turns his head. The chart comes down. He turns his head. I'm like, what is he doing? Then pop, 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 pop. I hear the first 4 shots. I see him go down, but I know I know he took himself down. He didn't fall down. Because I'm that close. At this point, I'm about 4 feet away.
Jeez.
And he kneels down, and I can see the blood go across his face, but I can't see where he's hit. initially because his ear is on the other side of me. And then at that same moment, all of these agents surround him. They put a protective stance around him. And then I hear the next 4 shots. It's at that moment that Michelle takes me down because being a reporter, I'm covering it, right? I'm not reacting as a normal human being. I'm covering it. And he just takes me down at that moment. I can hear the whole conversation between him and his agents. And it's in the book. It's really detailed in the book.
I'm excited.
But the funny is, if you can be funny, he kept saying, "I want to put my shoes on." And one of the agents had knocked his shoes off when they put this protective stance around him. And at one point, one of the agents, and they want to go. And at one point, one of the agents says, "Fine." And he gets his shoes on.
Oh boy. All right. Well, I'm excited to read this because I think it's such again, it wasn't like someone just covering this. You were feet from this happening, and your perspective is like nobody else's, which is great. I do want to pivot though to the latest thing that you wrote, which actually there's a few things you wrote, but the one that I want to focus on right now is actually a piece that you wrote for the Washington Post. And there's a couple things about it. I want to get to the substance of it most of all. But I didn't realize this until I dug in a little bit more, that you are going to offer people via the Washington Post a monthly column and give them insight into Pennsylvania. And so before I get to the first column where you wrote about Dave McCormick and John Fetterman, why did you think this was an important project to take on? And did they come to you or did you come to them? And like, why is Pennsylvania the focus of it? Like why should everybody in the rest of the 49 states care what the uniqueness of Pennsylvania?
So they came to me right before the election, right after. I can't remember exactly the timing. And I think that what the Post really wants is for, Pennsylvania at this moment is the most important state. And not just politically.
Says the person from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I've been telling people this for years. Nobody listened to me. But not only politically, but also culturally. And the culture really impacts our politics. And people don't seem to understand that. People have this perception that Pennsylvania is Philadelphia and to a lesser extent, Pittsburgh. But there is 65 other counties that actually decide our elections. They're very, very different from Philadelphia and more different than Pittsburgh. Pennsylvania, a large portion of Pennsylvania is Appalachia. That is a part of the country that people just sort of don't understand.
Including most of the media, right? I mean, that's where you've excelled, both with your first book, The Great Revolt, and now this is that part of what you bring is for a lot of these leftist, elitist, arrogant reporters is a sense, and this is why I wanted to hear how it came up, because you bring a perspective that they can't fathom. They just don't understand who these people, it's like a petting zoo. Who are these people that vote for Trump? Where are they? And you bring that perspective.
Right. And I think, and this is, and that's the other part of this book. I consistently understood that President Trump was going to win this election in Pennsylvania, despite what the polling showed and despite the narrative, because I was on the ground and I understand the state. And so you will see a very different election coverage and an understanding in the book Butler, and a very intimate one. But here's a case in point. Do you if your listeners remember Joe Biden in the State of the Union address, which is arguably his last best speech in February 2024, he brought up shrinkflation, right? And made a big
candy
deal.
bars.
Yeah, candy bars. Made a really big deal about it and pointed to Bob Casey and said, "You're going to be in charge of that." That's the now former U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania. And everyone that was dissecting that was saying, well, populists are going to be like really into this, right? Like, who doesn't like big corporations? Well, Pennsylvania is home of the snack belt, right? I don't think Biden, Casey didn't know this because I asked him. They don't understand that 80% of the snacks consumed in this country are made in 6 counties in Pennsylvania.
I didn't know that. I thought M&M Mars is in New Jersey. I only know that because I worked for a member of Congress from central New Jersey at one point back in the 90s. I didn't know that at all. That's, well, obviously Hershey, Pennsylvania makes sense.
But all the pretzels, all the potato chips, they're all made in Pennsylvania. They're farmed. The wheat is grown here. The cows are on our fields here. The manufacturers are here. The truck drivers, the farmers, everything that goes into making that snack that Joe Biden and Bob Casey decided to make an enemy of impacts voters. You can live in a C-suite. You can live in a county in a C-suite outside of Philadelphia, and you are not going to vote for the person that's going after your industry. So they don't. So while
Salena, that brings me to your story, though, your article in the Post, right? It's, to me, what I think is so fascinating, and this is what you write in the thing, and you said, in November, a state elected a conservative, Trump-supporting military veteran and former hedge fund CEO Dave McCormick to be U.S. Senator. Just 2 years earlier, many of the same voters helped to elect John Fetterman, a Democrat and strong defender of legal marijuana who brags about his F rating from the National Rifle Association. How do we square that? That you're talking about the snack capital of the world, these truckers and farmers, and yet you guys elect an unbelievably conservative champion in Dave McCormick and then John Fetterman.
Well, because the working class has changed, okay? And the working class is what put both of these men into office. I will give Fetterman and McCormick credit for showing up in places that like Trump did, right? In places nobody else would. It is very hard and Shapiro as well, right? So we elected all of them. But these men understood the importance of showing up and listening and talking to people about their lives and their concerns in a way that was authentic and real to them. And that is why all 4 of them were elected. Now Fetterman and Shapiro, while they're very, very different in terms of their belief system as Democrats, they're also moderating in their beliefs. Now, I wouldn't call them moderate.
Is that real? With Fetterman, yeah. I don't buy it. I just don't. I'm sorry. I think it's a shtick. I think he wears the Carhartt hoodie and just because it's a shtick, he wants to be seen. Like, I don't.
I've been covering John Fetterman for 20 years since he first ran for mayor in Braddock and won by 1 absentee ballot. It's
real. Okay.
It's very real. I would argue the only time we didn't really see the true breadth of John Fetterman was in the 2022 election after the stroke. And not only was he recovering from the stroke, he was also recovering from depression. You remember he checked himself in. Yeah, both of them can have debilitating impacts on your messaging. Yeah. I think I don't think he's going to be a Republican, but he has always been his own person. Remember, his parents are Republicans. They had a Trump and a Fetterman sign in their yard.
All right. Okay? Last thing, in 30 seconds, I want
to. That's Pennsylvania.
Beyond Pennsylvania, I got 30 seconds left. I want to ask you this. You also wrote a great story about the Ohio governor's race. Vivek Ramaswamy made his big announcement. He's going to run against Lieutenant Governor Jim Tressel, who just took office because the governor, DeWine, appointed the former lieutenant governor to the Senate seat. Tressel is a former Ohio State football coach, obviously a very popular guy. How, in 30 seconds, how do you think that race in Ohio plays out?
Well, so Tressel hasn't said that he's going to run yet. However, he's a legend in Ohio. Like, we can't take that away from him. And Dave Yost has won 3 statewide elections. He's the AG. But also Vivek has Trump's endorsement. So I think it's going to be really, really interesting. I don't think any Democrat's going to play in the state. They don't have a good bench. They do have the former woman that ran the COVID response in Ohio running as their candidate, but I don't think she's very popular with either party.
Okay. Salena, I literally could spend like 3 hours with you. But Erika Donalds has kind of come up. We're going to talk about education with her. I'm so excited. I want to have you back before the book comes out. The name of the book is Butler, The Untold Story of the Near Assassination of Donald Trump and the Fight for America's Heartland. It's available for pre-order now. We'll put that link in the show notes as well if you're interested in ordering. And I would strongly support anybody going and making sure you buy it. It helps Salena show how much, how sales and obviously pre-order. So go do that. And I love the writing that you do, mostly in the Examiner, but yes, these stories in the Post, as much as I hate to give them credit, it's only because of you. So thank you for joining us today. Keep up the great work, and I hope you come back soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. All right, guys, what a great conversation with Salena. Now I want to bring in the wife of Congressman Byron Donald, just announced for governor of Florida, endorsed by Trump. She is leading some education reforms that are so critical at the national and state level. And obviously, as the probable future First Lady of Florida, I think she is in the best place to actually talk about how we can make real change in education. Let's bring in Erika Donalds. Erika, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Sean. It's good to be with you.
All right. It's great to be with you. Wow, how timely. I want to talk about education and Linda McMahon and all of the issues that you've been a champion of. But obviously, the big news off the top is your husband announcing for governor and Donald Trump getting right behind him. How huge is that for you guys?
Oh, and indeed huge, right? As Donald Trump would say. We saw last week, just before we were arriving at CPAC, actually, the tweet came out from Donald Trump with his complete and total endorsement of my husband. I've been in Florida my whole life. Byron came in college, which is where we met. And we've been serving our communities, serving our state for our entire adult lives. So it's really exciting for us to have this opportunity now to perhaps serve the state at the highest level. I couldn't be more proud of him and really thankful to Donald Trump for his support.
I mean, I got to say, if you think about the last time he did this, right? Adam Putnam, a longtime Florida politician. I've known Adam through his days in Congress. Then he was statewide agriculture secretary. And I think sort of had the plan to just ascend to the governorship until Donald Trump put his complete and total endorsement behind a guy named Ron DeSantis. That shook up the race there pretty big. Do you guys think that on the Republican side, the field is now clear?
Well, we'll see, right? That doesn't always mean that everyone is going to step aside, but my husband has worked so hard to serve the people of Florida, to serve in Congress. It's certainly the president's weight holds a lot of weight in Florida, regardless of who anyone else might jump in the race. So I think that he has a great advantage having Trump's support, but he's not going to work any less hard to make sure that he earns the votes of our fellow citizens.
Yeah. Are you, let me just ask you this, and then I want to move on to education and kind of what's going on there. Are you guys, what is your relationship with the DeSantis family, both Mrs. Casey DeSantis, who had been pondering a run, and the current governor? I know that at one point, you guys had been relatively close. He's appointed you to lead some education efforts. Or do you still maintain a cordial relationship? Do you guys talk?
As far as I'm concerned, I'm very supportive of the governor and first lady and the work that they have done in our state. I know my husband, even in his announcement last night, praised the governor's work in Florida and what he's done to make Florida great. So we just want to continue that legacy. There's no hard feelings on our side. Obviously, Byron and I supported Donald Trump for president in the primary and not Ron DeSantis. Turns out that was a great decision since Donald Trump did an incredible job. But certainly no hard feelings on our side. We'll see what happens.
That's good. I kind of was a little disappointed to see the governor take a shot at your husband about not being in the fight, something to that effect, which I thought was both unnecessary and kind of untrue.
Well, it's definitely untrue. My husband served in the state house for 4 years, and he actually ran the first bill in the country that would allow parents and community members access to instructional materials so that we could find out the kind of woke indoctrination that was actually in those materials in the schools. So to say that he wasn't in the fight, he actually started the fight, right? When he was in the legislature. He also was the one who sponsored HB1, which was the Hope Scholarship Program, which was at the time the largest expansion of funding for parental school choice in our state. So he certainly has done a lot in helping to advance the same things that are important to the DeSantis's, and that Ron DeSantis as governor has been able to continue that fight. Again, we appreciate everything that he's done for Florida, his leadership during COVID, certainly. And I think that my husband, having a even more conservative record in Congress than Ron DeSantis did as a congressman is going to just continue those wins.
Yeah. I mean, there's no one who questions your husband's conservatism or his support of Donald Trump or the America First agenda. I think that's really not in dispute. You, as chair of the AFPI Florida chapter, as well as the Center for Education Opportunity, have been able to work closely with Linda McMahon, who's the overall chairman of AFPI for the last several years. You guys laid out a lot of plan for education, but I just want to start with her as a person. President Trump tapped her to lead the Department of Education. You know her. Why is she the best person to lead the Department of Education?
I do. I've been very fortunate to spend a lot of time with Linda McMahon over the past several weeks and months, and just even more respect her executive experience that she brings to the table for the department to effectuate what Donald Trump promised the American people, which was to shut down the department and to take the power, put it in the hands of the states and parents. The Department of Education doesn't educate a single child, but it is a behemoth that does a lot of things, and it needs an executive to come in there, evaluate where these things can go if they are to continue. What are the results supposed to look like for the return on investment for our tax dollars, and then be a part of leading the breakdown of the department so that it will and ultimately benefit the students at the classroom level. Unfortunately, we're paying for multiple levels of bureaucracy, both at the federal and state level, before it ever benefits a single student. I think Linda McMahon definitely has that executive expertise to make that happen.
So you're in a very unique position because you've been a champion of a lot of these issues. You've worked with Linda. Your husband's a member of Congress. You will be first lady. And if you could sort of say right now, if Linda called you and said, "Hey, Erika, you've been at the forefront of these issues. You're going to be, obviously, I don't mean to be presumptuous, but when you're first lady, I think you'll obviously, this is an issue you've been passionate about for a long time. So I assume you would champion it again as first lady of Florida. If she said to you, Erika, tell me, in a crystal ball, if we could look 4 years from now, what should the Department of Education look like in 40 years from now at the end of Donald Trump's term? And what would you like to see it do vis-a-vis a state like Florida in terms of support? None at all? How should it look?
Well, I have actually been advocating for the past 10 years for the Federal Department of Education to go away. So I have a lot of experience with thinking about what it should look like, in that it should be non-existent in 4 years. I hope President Trump gets his way and Congress will be cooperative with that. Now, there are some things that the department does now that should live on, like the Office of Civil Rights, which can go under the Justice Department, for example. Any student loan portfolio that might remain should be in Treasury, but I don't think that the federal government should be involved in student loans. That's a job for the private sector, and it's actually one of the main reasons that college going is so inflated, the cost of universities. So that's just two examples of things that can be moved off the plate of the department. And then the last one that I think is important is the research that's done in terms of collecting data, like the National Report Card, that many of our friends in the education reform movement are using that information in order to make improvements. But again, that can go into the department that handles the census to just collect that data. Everything else that the department does is just passing around money and pushing papers, and should just be eliminated completely.
So in an Erika Donalds perfect world, 4 years from now, some of those key responsibilities that you just enumerated should be taken over by other departments, but the department as a whole should cease to exist. Is that fair?
That would be my preference. Now, it's going to be difficult because there are a lot of funds that are passing through the department for students with disabilities and low-income students. And what we might end up seeing is that those monies still make it to benefit those students. I would love to see that parent directed. So if you're a parent of a student with disabilities, your student may be getting, the district may be getting about $10,000 to $15,000 from the federal government to help provide services for that student. Parents that I talk to don't think that their students are really getting the benefit. They want to see those dollars in an account that they control, like an education scholarship account, where they can go out and get the services that they think their student needs. That would be an ideal way to distribute those funds if those funds are going to continue.
So, and then look at it from the Florida perspective. I mean, I'm just obviously because that's where you guys are, but whether it's Florida or any other state, what should the relationship between the state and the federal government be with respect to education? Should it just be doling out funds? Should it just, I mean, like how would that work? Is it get rid of everything, shove it to the states, let them manage it? Or should there be some standards that the federal government sets that the state then executes on?
Well, that's what the situation has been thus far, right? The federal government has been passing out money to the states and supposedly upholding standards for those funds. However, with waivers and with the poor performance that the states have had academically, there has not been a return on the investment made by the federal government. And so I don't think that that system is working, but the ultimate accountability is actually to the parents. So if that money is in the hands of the parents have ability to choose whether they're going to direct those funds to their local school or their district, or if they're going to go to the private sector to get services. That's the accountability that I would be looking for, not necessarily government to government. That just hasn't worked. Giving that money to parents and allowing them to hold people accountable for the results that they see in their student, ultimately, that's where I would like to see us go.
President Trump mentioned that one of the places that after he's done with USAID, that Elon Musk should go hunting for savings is the Department of Education. When he goes there and starts hunting around for savings and inefficiencies and waste, et cetera, what do you think he's going to find?
Well, DOGE has already been in the Department of Education, and they've already rooted out a lot of waste related to DEI. I mean, over $1 billion just in the last year on race-based hiring, an equity-based summer camp, training programs for DEI. So there's already been a lot exposed and cut in the department just related to DEI and some of the president's executive orders. As far as waste, fraud, and abuse, I'll just give you an example. I've started several charter schools in Florida after serving on my local school board to try to increase options for families. A startup grant, which comes from the federal government, charter school startup grant, there have been times where we haven't received any funds for a startup grant into the second or third year of the charter school. So how is that a startup grant to help expand parent choice when you're not even getting the money until the third year the school is open? It just doesn't work.
If you send your kids to a charter school or to a parochial school, should the state be able to help out in your world? I mean, for example, when I was a kid, the local Catholic school used town buses, which I find fine because one way or another, that's not advancing an education. That's or a point of view. That's just getting them there. Are there resources that you think could be given to parochial schools, for example?
Well, my ideal educational infrastructure is that every dollar that is spent on education is parent directed. So if I were to have my way, every parent would have an education scholarship account, and sure, they could use that to go to their local public school and direct those dollars, but at least they would be making a conscious decision. I want my child to go to this public school. Otherwise, they could use it for tuition at a private school. But I think we think too binary about education. I would love to see more flexible and blended options where a student who needs a lot more help in math is in a small group environment, maybe a small tutoring environment to learn math, but maybe they're actually learning civics or reading on their own because they excel in that area. And parents can actually use those dollars in a more flexible way, depending on what the needs of their students are. I think that's where education is going in the next era of flexible education options that are parent directed and student centered.
So I know one of the talking points of the left is that when you talk about, dollars traveling with the students, is they always say, well, the rich people will send their kids to private schools or yank them, and then just the poor kids will get left in the public school system. Do you believe that that's true? And if not, why?
Well, I don't believe that's true necessarily because you look at a place like Miami-Dade County where 75% of parents are choosing a school that is outside of their zone public school. That is a majority minority county. Majority of students in Miami, English is not their first language, and majority low income. So many of those parents are making a choice to send their student outside of their zone public school. I think every parent, and including my own, and of course my husband is a great example of this as well, regardless of how much money or education that they have, they care about their children, and they're going to make the best choice that they can for their children's education when they have the agency to do so. So we do need to equip them with information and how to select the best option based on the information that they have. But we can't expect that just because they don't have money or they're not educated, that they can't do so. I mean, look at Ben Carson's mom, right? She wasn't even literate and she was able to produce one of the greatest minds in America.
That's true. I feel like we talk about money, and there's this adage in Washington, and especially from folks on the left, that the more you spend, the more you'll get. But education doesn't seem to bear that out. We throw a ton of money at Washington, D.C. schools, and yet they continue to get failing grades. What is the metric like? But the left has defined this, that if you spend a lot of money, you care more than outcomes. So how do we and should we look at education?
Yeah, I always like to ask people when they say we should fully fund education, to tell me what that dollar amount is. Because what are they going to say? $50,000 a student? I mean, they would have to go well above what's spent in DC or New York, where they're still not getting good results. You know, in Florida, we do an annual report on the performance of charter schools versus public schools. And historically, charter schools have been about 20 to 30% funded less than the traditional public schools, but they are outperforming the traditional public schools at every demographic, even the lowest income students, the most difficult students, students with disabilities. So all of those demographics are outperforming their public school counterparts, even with 20 to 30% less funding. So I would love to see education funded at higher levels. I want to pay teachers more and make it more competitive to be a teacher, for example, but it's not a money problem. We've been throwing money at this problem for decades. $190 billion was put in after COVID to combat learning loss. And we've seen that didn't work. Where did $190 billion go? I can tell you it did not go into helping students achieve academically, unfortunately. And so it's not about that. What it is about is free market competition, free market principles, innovation, entrepreneurship coming into the education space and being welcomed there, where parents as consumers can make choices that are best for their children.
So is it like the unions that are the problem? I mean, is that what's called? I mean, that teachers can't teach or unions are putting shackles on them? I mean, look, what is it that's causing? I mean, because again, the evidence is clear, as you just laid out. The charter schools get less money, yet have a higher degree of success and scores. So what is it that's holding public schools back?
Unions are a major issue, and they're part of the reason why I believe that teachers are not paid what they deserve, or at least good teachers are not paid what they deserve, because what unions do is bring everyone down to the lowest common denominator, and they protect bad teachers from being fired. And so that's one of the issues. But as I mentioned, I'll just go back to my previous comments. Any organization, any industry that operates as a monopoly, as the public school system has, is not going to serve their clientele well. We don't accept it in any other industry and expect that it's going to be good. I mean, remember when Comcast was the only way that you could get cable or internet, and how horrible it was notoriously until it started to get some competition. In the school and education space, we need free market competition to lift all of the boats. We've seen it happen where there are areas of our country where there's more parental choice. The students that are in the public schools, remaining in the public schools, as you alluded to earlier, actually perform better as well as the students that are making an alternative choice. And so it really comes down to that first principle. The root of the problem is the monopoly, not who controls the monopoly or the fact that unions are operating within the monopoly necessarily, because the free market will take care of those issues. The root problem is the monopoly itself.
How big of a factor like COVID? What I worry about is this next generation and what COVID did in terms of like just reading alone, the setbacks that occurred to young kids being able to get the education at a critical phase. Like, how much is that going to set back this generation?
Well, COVID just amplified the problems that were already existing in the schools. Reading is a major issue. You know, the podcast series Untold Story really exposed the problems with reading programs that are not research-based, that are not phonics-based, and actually proven over time in history to help students to succeed in reading and comprehend reading over the long term. And unfortunately, the monopoly system has not made adjustments to their reading portfolio and their pedagogy to follow what is research-based and completely phonics-based. So what happens when you have COVID and you have a time when it can no longer be hidden behind the closed doors of the school? Parents started to see, well, wait a second, they're actually not reading here. There's a facade of what's happening. And the students are out of school for an extended period of time. So they don't get that repetition and they don't have the foundation for reading. It really just exacerbated the bad curriculum, the curriculum crisis that we have in this country that wasn't teaching kids to read proficiently in the first place.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm so excited because I think this happens piece by piece, right? Meaning that when you guys go down, when your husband's governor and your first lady, you guys can really make Florida a model of all the things that you're talking about because you have the background and the expertise to actually execute on so many of these issues. And I think what happens is that will infect other states. They will look and say, do you see what the Donalds are doing in Florida? We should do that in, South Dakota or, Kentucky, or wherever. I think that you guys can become this incubator about how to do education right. And that will infect so many of these other states who've tried to figure out, maybe don't have the same ability to show how charter schools or freeing people of the unions, et cetera, could work. So I'm excited about what you guys are going to do in Florida.
Well, Sean, that's another reason why I've been working with America First Policy Institute as the chair of their Center for Education Opportunity, so that we can take the wins that we've had here in Florida when it comes to education and share those with the rest of the country, share those lessons with the federal government to help get President Trump's education agenda across as well. Because, Florida is a leader. We've been a leader in school choice for decades now. And we do want to share that success with the rest of the country because we really need to save this country. And we can't do it without a great education system.
Totally agree. Erika Donalds, thank you for joining us today. I wish you and your husband all the best on the campaign trail and look forward to checking back in with you on what you guys are doing both at AFPI and then eventually in Florida to make education great again.
Thank you so much for having me, Sean. I appreciate it.
You bet. Wow, 2 amazing conversations. I'm so excited. By the way, panel discussion tomorrow, big insight into Trump world on Friday. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. I've got a great newsletter coming out, SeanSpicer.com on Friday as well. Yesterday's was a must read as well. Go sign up. It's free. But on Thursday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, I'm hosting a Zoom call because in my wellness journey, I've realized that there's a lot of companies that are actually MAHA approved, that are on the forefront of affordable, healthier, all natural. It's amazing. If you actually want to hear about some of these products, household products, personal care products, I've switched all over to them. They're more natural, more effective, and more affordable. It's a family-owned American business. I love doing business with these guys, and I'm going to tell you how I got involved and how you can too. Space is limited, so RSVP now by texting the word invite to 276-500-1185. Text invite to 500-1185. Thanks for being with us today. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.